welcome back to my channel, and I hope you've all had an amazing day. Today we are back on Dressed to Impress, but today is a little bit of a different video. This is probably one of my most highly requested videos ever, and I was a bit surprised about that because the video is about custom makeup, but I don't think that I'm that good at custom makeup. But it's one of my most requested videos. I am constantly getting comments asking for makeup tutorials when I've done videos on my channel, just kind of, showing off a new face and things like that. So ask and you shall receive. Today is going to be me going through all of my tips on how I make custom makeup faces and showing you some of my most highly requested ones. And then you can save the hex codes or the combinations and things like that. Just to put a disclaimer out there, I do not think that I am particularly great at custom makeup. I think I'm okay. I only recently started getting better at custom makeup faces now that I've started finding my style. Before then, I'd use a whole wide array of different faces. So if you're looking at my looks and my faces and you don't think that they are your cup of tea, that is totally fine. Everybody has such different tastes, but you might still find something useful in this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out, and it means you'll never miss another upload from me again. But without any further ado, let's get right into the video. The first thing I do when making a new custom face is I decide what skin tone I want to go for, and I use 5 main ones. I'm not saying these are the best skin tones in the game. These are just the ones that I really enjoy. And again, they're not everybody's favorite. As you can see, they're a little bit more cool toned, but that's just the way that I love them. So I have this one here, and I'll just flash the hex codes up just in case anybody wants them. I think this is a really nice pale skin tone hex. I feel like sometimes when you're trying to make a pale skin tone, it can end up looking too ghostly or a little bit too cool toned or almost kind of grey. But I think this one, for me anyway, is just right. Then I have this one, and here's the hex code for this one. Then I have this one, and here is the hex code for this one. And then going into some of my more deeper skin tones, I have this one, and I also have this one. I think for the sake of this video, I'm going to go for this one in the middle. And I always tend to go to this makeup chair here because I think it has the best lighting. These all show up differently and it drives me insane. But this one seems to have the best lighting. I think in this update, it's not as bad. In previous updates, it was really evident that there was such different lighting going on in each of the makeup chairs. But I feel like they have kind of taken that on board and they've listened to us and they've changed that a little bit. I do have a couple of dull code faces as well. I will try and steer away from those just because I know that not everybody has dulls and dull codes. These are my 6 most used faces, and none of these contain any dull code items, and they're a range of different skin tones going from super fair to beautiful deep skin tones as well. I do have a couple different more theme dependent faces down here as well. Obviously this is one that I use for Gyaru. I have my kind of vampire face here and a couple of ethereals. And then getting down here, we have a lot of my faces that I have made and I don't tend to use as much anymore. This face, what used to be one of my absolute favorites. I used to love this one and this one as well. And then getting down here, these are, oh, it's kicked me out. These are ones that I have not used in quite a long time. If you are a long time subscriber of mine, you know that this is one that I used to use all the time for my ethereal looks. But now we have so many new makeup items out and I've kind of developed my skills a little bit that I don't tend to reach for it. So obviously the first thing I want to touch on is eyes, and this is all very subjective, and just to reiterate, this is just the way that I do it. This is just my opinion and what I prefer. Out of the feminine eyes, there's not that many that I love. I think these ones are quite cute. I think these ones are really cute. And also these ones. These were all ones from the Halloween update and I think they did a really good job. These ones as well are pretty cute. Again, quite theme dependent. Or they could be your, your everyday eyes, your every look eyes. I love when people do something a little bit more outside the box and, not just the standard eyes like everybody else. And I think doing things like that can sometimes really help you define a recognizable style for you. Honorable mention, I do also love these. Ignore the red lashes, they look a little bit scary at first, but if you go to lashes and just make those black, you just have 3 lashes. And then you don't need the ones from the dressing room. So if you're in like Star Showdown and things like that, you still have lashes on, which I think is really good. I really like that they added that feature. In general though, I do tend to prefer the newer eyes, and that is because you can change the shading on these as opposed to, let's just take something random. Let's take these ones, and you see how we have all this kind of pink and red around the edge. You cannot change that. The only thing you can change is the iris and change the color of the eyes, but you cannot change the shading, which is a little bit of a shame because the shading can sometimes be really, really overpowering, and I'll get to that in kind of my next section as well. I do hope that one day they go back and they kind of rework some of these eyes. I think the shapes of a lot of them are beautiful. Like, I love these ones, and like further down here, like these ones are absolutely gorgeous, but you just can't change any shading, so it leaves you quite limited. I do also really like these ones as well. Again, you can change the shading with these, which is great. And one of the things I love doing as well, so by default they are usually they're usually a light color, they're usually kind of white or cream, and even though it is showing as white, it comes off quite pinky red. So what I like to do is, just to make it a little bit more cool toned, I'll keep my cursor right here at the bottom, but I'll just move it up towards the blue, and you see how that has just made it way less red. So just for comparison, there's the white, and then here's the one with the slight bit of blue. So it's such a small change, but it does make such a big difference and leaves you with more of a neutral base if you're not looking to add eyeshadow. Otherwise, that kind of red ring around the eyes can sometimes be quite overpowering, especially on deeper skin tones. On deeper skin tones, I do the same thing. I just tend to make the blue a little bit darker. And you see how that hasn't gone blue and it's gone kind of more of a smoky grey sort of colour? That's probably one of my favourite things to do to make the eyes a little bit more neutral. My other favourite eyes, and probably the ones that I use the most, are actually in the masculine section. I didn't even realise that there were such good options in the masculine section until a few months ago. I was playing with my friend and she had this absolutely gorgeous mug. And I asked her, I was like, where did you get those eyes? And she pointed them out. She said they're in the masculine section, and I had no idea. So my favorite ones are, again, 2 of the new eyes that came in the Halloween update. So 157 and 153. If you watch me, you probably have seen me use these ones a lot, and these ones as well are really cool. I understand that these are Halloweeny and, you know, kind of just have the whites of this eye, but I still think it's super cool, and I don't know, it doesn't put me off using it. If anything, it kind of makes me want to use it more. It makes it look that little bit more unique. But I also love these ones. I did used to really, really love these ones, but the issue with these is that you can't change the shading. So even though the eyes are such a gorgeous shape, once you've got lashes on, these are so sultry and just so nice, you can't change the shading, which is such a shame because they are just so pretty. These ones as well are really nice, and so are these ones, but again, I have the same issue where I can't change the shading. For the sake of this video, I think I'm going to go for these eyes, and I'm just going to change them to kind of a medium kind of seafoam green, almost like this. That's quite a nice shade. And then for the shading, again, I'm just going to keep this really neutral. You can obviously make this darker if you're going for like dark makeup looks, but I just tend to keep it quite neutral, quite cool toned, so I'm just going to go with this. For the brows, I tend to use feminine brows, and I always tend to go for, you see how these are white and these ones are brown? With these ones, you kind of have full range of customizability of them, and you don't really have any limitations. Whereas say with these ones, it's a lot harder to color them. You can definitely see that they're colored, but see, like these ones, I have made them lilac. They're like almost red as opposed to how they look there. So I tend to use the white brows, and my favorite ones to use are these ones that I have on now, but usually a dark color, usually kind of like a dark brown color, or these ones here, 114. These ones here, 113, and then I do also like these ones at 112. These three I think was such a good little collection of brows to add to the game. These ones as well are quite nice. 103 and 106 are nice as well. Again, they're just my personal favorites. I do also use these ones as well, number 98, but you just can't really follow them as well, but they do look really, really good. I like how the brow kind of goes into like the, what's it called here? Into like the crease here. And then honorable mentions, I think these ones are really, really nice for more ethereal faces. And these ones here as well. One of the older ones too, these really, really thin ones, I think can look so good as well when used correctly. But for the sake of this video, I'll go for some that I use quite regularly. And I think I'll go for these ones. And I'll just keep them brown for now. But the lips is kind of similar to the eyes. There are a couple lips that I really like using. Again, we have had some new ones in the recent Halloween update, which in my opinion have kind of changed the game for the female lips. But again, really, really subjective. Some of my favorite ones, I like these ones, 154, and I'll just make them kind of a neutral color just to start with. I'll just make them like that. These ones are really nice. I also love these ones. These are some of my absolute favorites. The shape of these is stunning, and I'll tend to make them a little bit darker if I'm using these as well. I do also quite like these new ones here, and these ones can be really nice as well. I love that they have added duotone lips finally, and I do love that they are adding more smaller lips into the game. I feel like sometimes the bigger lips can kind of overpower the face a little bit, and you have to use very specific eyes and very specific noses with them. But now I like the variety they're adding. These ones here in particular, 156, are quite nice as well. But again, for some of my absolute favorite lips, they are once again in the masculine section. These lips, 149, are probably my most used lips in the game. I just think they're beautiful. They look more realistic, and I know that the game isn't meant to look realistic. Like, look, my avatar does not look realistic whatsoever with the rest of the face going on. But there's just something about these lips, they just look better. These ones as well, 141. I know the texture is a little bit less textured, but they're still really nice. These ones as well. Oh, not these ones. These ones, number 89. These are really nice too. The only issue that I have with these, very, very similar to the brows, is you have to kind of use the ones that are coloured white to have full range of what colour you want to use. So for example, these ones, I can make these any colour, and you know, the colour that comes up there is pretty much the colour that comes up there. However, if I wanted to use these ones, even though it's green, it's still showing this kind of murky colour here. So you can colour them, it needs a little bit more wiggling, if you get what I mean. You have to work a little bit harder to kind of get a nice tone there. But I do love these ones. I think these ones are really, really pretty. For the sake of this video, I'm going to go for these, and I'll just go for one of my most used kind of lip tones, which is this one. This is just one of my hair color shades, and I just usually slide it up and down to kind of go with the rest of the face. Then onto contour. Again, very, very subjective. This is the men's section. I'm going to go back to the female section. This is very subjective. There are a few that I prefer more than others. I think this one is really cool because it gives you that kind of contouring around the lips. So if you want them to look a little bit more plump, even if you're using some of the smaller ones, it can give you that little bit of extra shape. I do really like this one as well. I love this one. I think this is probably one of my most used contours. This one is really pretty as well, but I feel like the center is a little bit too warm. But that's more just an issue of the skin tones that I use, because the skin tones I use are a little bit more cool toned, but I'm sure on a warmer skin tone that would look really, really pretty. Some of the older ones as well I still think are quite nice. Like this one, I think the blush placement is really pretty. I think this one is pretty, and again, it gives that kind of shaping around the mouth. This one just gives kind of highlight in the center, and then down here, again, you're adding kind of shape and dimension to the face without making it look super, super glowy. But for the sake of this video, I'm probably gonna go for this one. And think I'm actually going to make this a little bit darker. Again, I do a similar thing with my blush as I do with my eyeshadow, and this is going to look crazy at first, but I tend to make it a little bit blue and just make it a little bit more cool tone, and that looks more like a contour now rather than kind of, I don't know, it just looks a little bit too warm before. It does work a little bit better on these more blushy faces, so if you find that the blush is just kind of way too pink, adding a little bit of blue can really help that. And I know that the center of the face looks blue there, but once you've added your face detailing, it honestly, it goes away. But just for now, I'm just going to take this one and make this a little bit more blue there. And then on to the face, we have a ton of details, and again, I do have quite a few doll codes, so I do have a few extras here that you guys might not have, but I'll do my best just to stick to ones that I think everybody has. When it comes to noses, I do feel like the female section is a little bit lacking. We have had a few new ones that have been great. We have had a little bit more diversity within noses, because previously every single nose was like these teeny tiny button noses, and I think they're cute, but not everybody has a teeny tiny button nose. And I feel like the highlight as well on some of them, maybe not that one, but like these ones, I feel like the highlight sometimes is just a little bit too strong, and it's kind of difficult to find that sweet spot where you can make it the right shade for the face without making it look like they have kind of green and blue highlighter on the nose. So again, similar to lips and eyes, don't be scared to go into the masculine section. There are some really good noses in here. This is one of my favorites. It's just a little bit bigger, a little bit more pronounced. I think it looks really nice on these kinds of faces. This one as well I think is really cool. Oh, it's gone off. This one I think is really cool as well. It gives you that strong highlight in the center, but it also brings this shadow up here, which I think is just really cool. And again, it can just make a face look that little bit more elevated, if you get what I mean. Like, it adds the extra face detailing without actually using any more of your 6 slots, because you only have 6 spaces to add things. That's including your nose. But I think for this one, I might go for this nose. I think this is a really cute nose. And I am not a huge fan of how red the noses come out, so again, exactly the same as what I do with the eyes. I just make it a tiny little bit blue, so you're just seeing how in comparison that's the original, and adding that little bit of blue just makes it that little bit more cool toned. If you like kind of the redness around the noses, that is totally fine. Again, everything that I'm mentioning in this video is purely subjective, but that's just the way that I do mine. And I'm going to head back over to the feminine section, and we have had a couple new freckles, which I always love adding to the faces. These ones are the new ones. I do find sometimes that they are a little bit too red, and I can't seem to get a nice spot where I can, you know, make them not look super red. Even if I'm using kind of light browns, they still look a little bit too intense. So for me, I tend to stick to these ones, which I absolutely love, and then I also really like these ones as well. And again, I'll just kind of move them around a little bit. They don't really, I don't think that it matters too much for these because they are so faint, you can't really see any kind of defined colour on them. These ones as well, I think are really cute. These came with the Wicked update, and yes, they are green, but if you kind of layer them underneath, you can't really tell. From here, I tend to go down into the other section and take the face highlight. I usually take this because I add blue into the face at this stage, and this kind of just tones that down. And I don't want it to be super intense, so I'll usually just make it like this. You can go like full intensity and go for bright white, but that to me just isn't my favorite, so I'll tend to go for like a light grey sort of colour. You can also move this around and make it more golden, say like here. This is a really nice little area here for some face highlight, but I tend to keep it on the cooler side, so about here. This I am more than happy with. I would quite happily stop at this. Eyeshadow for me is one of the things that I tend to add per round, because sometimes, especially if I'm rushing or it's a theme where I need a little bit more time, I don't have time. Say for example, if I had added this and I had made this kind of a warm brown and say the look I was going for was more neutral, having to spend that extra, 30 seconds going through and adjusting this and maybe taking this off or maybe making it a different kind of color, it does slow you down. But that's just a personal preference for me. I tend to just add eyeshadow during the round if I have time for it. But some of my favorites for that are this one, and I do love this hex for this. It just works with these skin tones. Again, just another kind of cool toned brown that I use. And then we did get some nice new ones in the Halloween update as well. So this one brings like really cool smoky liner looks, and you have this one that's really cool, and this one as well. But probably one of my favorite ones that came within the Halloween set is the one that goes underneath. So this one here, again, not really necessarily with this makeup look with these eyes, but you can make it like super bright underneath. It's just a nice item. I just really liked that one. These as well I think are super cute, 265. They just add like a little bit of brightness to the skin, especially for like more ethereal looks. You can just add like a pop of color. So say if you're doing like a pink look, I could always just add like a little bit of like a soft pink here, and it just adds that little bit extra. But that's usually the extent I'd go to on my human faces. Again, I don't tend to add too much extra makeup and stuff like that unless it's for a specific round. I do quite like this shading here, 176. But again, I would just make that a little bit more cool toned and make that a little bit darker, just to make it look more like contour, and it kind of just makes the face look a little bit less square, if you get what I mean. So if you're struggling with blush colors, if you're feeling like everything's looking too pink, try and add some blue or some green. Honestly, it sounds crazy, but it changed the game for me. But that is this face. I know it's very similar to some of the ones I already have, but these are the individual items that I use the most. These eyes I think are stunning, the lips I think are amazing, the brows I think are just really solid. But that is my usual process for making faces. I know a lot of people have asked, so I hope that this has been a little bit useful for you. I hope that you have found some cool tips, something that you didn't know before. One other thing as well that I completely forgot to mention is you can change the order of things down here. So the face highlight I always put at the start there, so that it's kind of underneath the nose. Otherwise it kind of covers everything up and puts a little haze over everything. But that works for a lot of things. So say if you wanted this to be a little bit less intense, you can move that over there. If you're feeling like things don't look quite right, just move things around down here until you get kind of what you're looking for. It makes such small changes, but that small change can, make you really like that face. Now going into some of my most requested face tutorials, I'll just show you a couple. If there's any others in particular that you really want to see, obviously let me know in the comments down below, and I might be able to add like a YouTube short of it or something like that. These ones are my newest ones and I am loving this style. I know that it's not for everybody. If it's not your kind of thing, that is totally fine, but I absolutely love this like super dark kind of cool tone blush and the kind of dark details. I just think it's absolutely stunning. This is one that I usually get a lot of mentions for, and whenever I use this face in a round, people tend to really enjoy it. So I'll just show you what I did for it. So for the eyes, I used the masculine eyes and I used number 153. And this is the hex code for the eyes. This is a hex for eyes I use quite frequently. It's just that beautiful kind of blue grey icy color. And then for the shading, I just made it kind of a grayish blue, just to make this super cool tone but not too dark. For the brows, I used 098 and I just made them a kind of dark brown color. Again, with these brows, like they don't really change too much, so just any sort of dark brown would work for them. For the lips, again, I went for some of my favorites. These are number 155 and I just made them a kind of cool toned brown, and this is the hex for those. For the contour, I used this one here, number 44, and this was the hex code for this. And I used this one because it adds that extra darkness under the eyes, and I have just personally been absolutely loving that. But again, I know that it's not for everybody. I know it's not everybody's favorite style. And then for the rest of the face, I used this highlight and just made that white. I used this blush, which is number 32, and I made it this kind of dark brown color. For the freckles, I added 186 and they are just white. I haven't adjusted the color of those at all. For the eyeshadow, I used this one, 297. This came with the Halloween update as well. And I just made this kind of a dark, cool toned brown, just to add a little bit of length on the outer corner. And then for the nose, I used one of the newer ones. This is number 344 and this is the hex code for that. I just made it a little bit darker because I'm just not a huge fan of kind of the pinkiness there. So that is this face. Again, this is probably the one I get the most kind of comments on. I love using this blush and I love this contour. I used a very similar combination on this one here as well. And same with this one as well actually, although this one is a little bit more kind of cutesy, but still that same kind of dark vampy style. Other ones that I get quite a few requests on are some of my ethereal faces down here. This is probably the one I use as the base for most of my faces, and a lot of the time I'll actually take the lips off and just have kind of no lips there. But these are the ones I used for this. The eyes I used were 167 and I just made them dark blue. Again, because the rest of the face is blue, but obviously if you're doing say a pink ethereal look, you could just make those pink, I guess. And then with the shading, again, that was just super dark blue as well. The brows, I just went with these ones, 134, and those were super dark blue. The lips I've already shown, but they were 160 and just dark blue. And then for the face contouring, I went for this. Another one that I love using for my ethereal faces is this one. I think this looks really, really cool, especially if you make that like a super dark deep color. It makes that center highlight look really, really bright. And then the face detailing, which is the part that people usually want to see, I used this highlight here, which is in the other section, and it's just down here at the bottom. And I used the more intense one for this. And again, you can move this up and down, but I like to keep it just somewhere in the middle. I used this skin detailing here, which is in the skin section. This is 036, and this is a really cool way to add little bits of extra color. I know that it's to represent vitiligo, but it does just add like little bits of extra detailing for ethereal faces as well. I love using it on pink looks too, but that is that, and I just had that as a super dark blue. Then I used these two eyeshadows, 301 and 270, and I had this one as kind of like a light blue, and then I had this one as a darker blue. Again, you can just change these around. And then one of my favorite items was this one here, and this is in the other section, and this is 288. I believe this came in the Halloween update as well, but this is super cool for adding more color to the face as well. When I'm doing ethereal looks as well, I will typically use this one as my base, and say if, for example, like sunset came up, I would usually go in here and maybe make this a little bit more yellow and then change everything else around. So I might make those kind of an orange color, and I'd hop in here and I'd take this one off because this just adds kind of purple there, but I might add, say, this one and then add some more kind of gold in there. And then I'd hop in here and do the same. I change these skin details maybe to like a more of a burnt orangey, kind of warm sort of color. And then same with these, maybe just make them orange. And then the nose, you always gotta make sure to adjust your nose if you've adjusted the rest of the face. Make that like that, and then maybe some orange there and some orange here. And then all I need to do then is maybe even remove the lips. You don't always need the lips on there. And then adjust the eyes, and then adjust the shading on there as well. And then once I was happy with the color changes to the face, I just hop in here and again, just adjust the skin tone to match the theme. But it is so much quicker and so much more convenient just changing the color details on a face that you've already made than having to create an entire new one, which is why I love having kind of these ones down here that I can do that with. Again, this one that I've just shown you is probably one of the ones that I use the most for my bases. But yeah, I really, really hope that you have enjoyed this one. Again, it's not a video similar to anything I've done before. It's just one that has been requested so much that I thought I should probably just go ahead and do it. If there are any of these faces that you specifically wanted to see, again, let me know in the comments and I'd be more than happy to make like a YouTube short or something like that. Again, to reiterate, I don't think that my custom faces are like the best in the world. I have only just started kind of finding my own style with them, and I am happy with the style that I found. I'm happy with the style that I do. But I really hope that you have enjoyed this one. If anybody can take away just one thing from this video as something maybe they didn't know before, or a tip or a trick that you found helpful, then that means my job is done, and I'm really happy about that. We will return to normal Dressed to Impress gameplay again tomorrow. But again, like I said, this was just one that had been requested so many times that I just wanted to get one out there, and hopefully it's one that you can always kind of refer back to. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider giving it maybe a like, maybe a comment, and I will see you all next time. Bye guys!